Hi everyone, my name is Vishal Singh and I'll be teaching you chess today. So in the previous class, we had been doing the movement of the knight and how to utilize the knight in the game. Basically, also creating attack with the knight, and we were not done with it. So we'll be starting with that today. And as soon as we're done with that, only a little bit of that is left, so that will be done really quickly. And after that, we'll be heading on to the basic movement of the pawn, which is the again the least that carries the least amount of points in the chessboard, but actually is quite useful when they're all together. Okay, so we'll be learning the movement of that, and later on also, if we have time, we'll also do creating an attack with the pawn as well. That is actually quite interesting. Okay, so let's start with the today's lecture. I'll be sharing my screen now. All right, here we are. Okay, so I guess we did this. So the again I'll repeat this really quickly. So the answer here was again you're creating an attack with the knight. The closest piece to the knight being this the enemy bishop. If you move your knight to the f4 block, knight to f4, then the enemy bishop is then in the attack range. And honestly, the enemy bishop is trapped because if it tries to kill our pawn, our pawn at f3 will capture the bishop, and if it tries to escape, the king can capture at g2. If it tries to escape to f1, our rook or our king can capture. So that was all about this one. uh, Moving on to the next one. Okay, now again you're playing as white and you have to create an attack using your knight only, since we are learning the movement of knight. So look carefully again. The king over here is protecting these two pawns at f7 and h7. This bishop right here at b6 is actually quite far, the enemy bishop. The knight over here is also being provided protection by the two pawns. The only piece that is not protected and is not too far from the knight is this pawn at h6. So how do we attack that? Basic, you know how a knight moves and how the attack range of the knight works. So the basic answer should be knight to. Again, please pause the video before I throw a puzzle at you. Look at it, please think, and then come back. I do not want to give you all the answers away. I want you guys to think. This is what the game is about. Basically, the more you think, the more possibilities you take into account, the more you analyze the board, the game, the better you will get at it, and the faster you will learn about it. Got it? Okay, I'll give out the answer now. So the answer is knight to f4, since this will then be in the attack range of our knight. Got it? See, really simple. Okay, moving on to the next one. Okay, now you again, this is actually very interesting. Please pause the video right here. You do not have a knight. Look at the board. You do not have a knight. How will you actually attack using a knight? All right, please think carefully. Pause the video. Give it 2 to 3 minutes away. This is actually quite interesting, and then come back. Okay. So now, as you see, you do not have the knight. All you have is a rook, a few pawns, and that is it. Even your enemy, you're basically at the equal strength right now. The enemy has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 pawn. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're actually one down. The enemy has one more point than you do overall. So what now? What you're at benefit because your pawn is about to reach the eighth rank. If you're playing as white and if your pawn reaches at the eighth rank, your pawn is basically promoted. You get to choose what piece you want. Okay, so that is the power of the pawn. When it reaches the eighth rank, you get to choose what piece you want. All right, you can choose the bishop, the queen, the knight, the rook, anything you want. Okay. And the same goes for the black pawns. If you're playing as black and your pawn reaches the first rank over here, you again get to choose what you want. Okay, so now that I've told you the answer, you will be choosing a knight. Why? Because this is creating an attack with the knight, and you're basically attacking the rook over here and also the pawn over here at the same time. Got it? Quite simple. Even if the rook tries to save itself, you can still take out the pawn. And again, that will be a attack to the rook. Quite simple. Okay. Moving on to the next one. Okay. So this is the very initial game. This is how usually the game starts. You're playing as white, and the basic way to, because to attack this enemy pawn, this is the closest one right now at the moment. So you cannot attack it using your left knight. Why? Because that will not be in the attack range at all. This is not how a knight attacks. How does a knight attack? Like this. So you'll be using your knight at the right side. So your move will be knight to f3. Now is this in the attack range? It is, right? Yeah. So that was all about creating an attack with the knight. So we're done with that. We'll now be moving over to the basic movement of the pawn and how to utilize the pawn more efficiently in the games. Okay, so we'll start with the movement of the pawn, and if we have time, we'll even learn creating an attack with the pawn. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so now you see you have to capture this star. Now you might be again be wondering if the pawn can only move one block at a time ahead. How do I capture this star? Well, the answer is quite simple. I just told you in this video. If your pawn is if your pawn reaches, if you're playing as white and your pawn reaches at the 8th rank, you get to choose what piece you want. So let's try it. And as we all want the strongest piece around, we'll be obviously be going for the queen. Okay, now that you have a queen, you can easily capture this star. Easy. Okay. Now let's the same rule applies here. The pawn cannot move sideways, not even diagonally. It can attack diagonally, but only one block at a time. I've told you this before as well. So our only option is to take our pawn to the top at the 8th rank and choose a piece. Now, if you look carefully at the pattern, you will create a new piece over here. If you carefully look at the pattern, you bringing a queen over here won't be quite helpful. Why? Because look at the pattern. All of these are in an L-shaped pattern. So which piece would be the perfect for to capture all the stars over here? Yes. And yeah, the correct answer would be the knight. Why? Because this is how a knight moves in an L shape. Got it? So knight to d7, very simple. Knight to e5, knight to c4, knight to b6, and then finally capturing knight to a8. Very simple. Okay. Now we all know the pawn will move only one block at a time, but it will attack diagonally. So now we'll be using that this time. See, now you're able to capture the star diagonally. So this is the very basic of how a pawn attacks. Again, heading on to the next one. Okay, so here you cannot capture this star directly because see, suppose if this was a piece, your own piece or your enemy piece here, you cannot move ahead. The system itself isn't allowing me to move ahead. I can only capture diagonally. Got it? Yeah. Moving on, we can capture either of the stars at b6 or d6. Doesn't quite matter because we need to reach at the top. Why? The pawn cannot capture in a straight path, and we need to capture all the stars over here. So we'll need to promote our pawn into a stronger piece. Okay. So okay, let's move ahead. And finally, let's take a queen, the most powerful piece, and quite simple. Okay, again, uh, let's again the pawn can only capture diagonally. I've told you. Now here you have an option. You can either capture the one towards the left or to the right. Again, pause the video, think, and please come back. So, okay, now I'll give away the answer. Which one do you think you should capture first, the left one or the right one? Okay, the correct answer would be the right one. Why? Because once you capture the star at b5 on the left side, you cannot move ahead anymore. The star will be the star at b6 will be blocking you. See, you failed. So you need to capture the star at d5 in order to keep moving ahead. Once you reach here, you again choose your favorite piece and then finally capture all the stars. Got it? All right. So that was all for today. We learned we're done with creating an attack with the knight. We learned the basic movement of the pawn. There are still some remaining. We'll be completing that in the next video. And hope you enjoyed the class. Have a nice day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.